When my husband Paul and I got out of the car, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were really excited. They asked Paul, "Hey Paul, what's with this car? It's amazing. I'm glad you finally decided to live like us. But it's a bold move to buy such a fancy car out of the blue." Paul laughed and said, "This isn't my car, it's Jasmine's father's car." "What?" my mother-in-law and sister-in-law said together. Then my parents got out of the car. My in-laws were shocked to see them dressed so nicely. What an expensive-looking suit, and I've seen that outfit before. It's a high-end brand. Why are Jasmine's parents wearing such expensive clothes? My name is Jasmine. I'm a 28-year-old office worker. I married my husband Paul last year. He has always been kind to me since we started dating and takes good care of me. I was so happy to marry him. We share the housework because we both work. Paul lived alone for a long time and is great at doing chores. He's even a better cook than I am, depending on what we're making. We support each other and have a very happy life. However, there are people who make our happy married life difficult. My in-laws. They assume I'm poor and say mean things to bully me. Why do they think I'm poor? I believe it started at the dinner party where our families met before our wedding. My in-laws are a family of 4. My parents-in-law, sister-in-law, and my husband. My father-in-law used to be a banker and is quite wealthy. He wears only brand-name clothes. They think wearing expensive things shows status. My husband, however, is different. He buys second-hand clothes online and makes them look as good as new. When I met my in-laws for the first time, I was surprised by their personalities and tastes, which were so different from my husband's. I even wondered if he was adopted. My husband lived alone for a long time because he didn't share his family's values. He moved out as soon as he started college. Because my in-laws believe being rich is everything, they didn't think highly of me and my parents when they first met us. My father runs a small factory. When my in-laws and sister-in-law found out, they made fun of him. He runs a factory, and yes, he might be a president, but a factory I've never heard of must be poor. A big bank where I work would never give him a loan. Talking so rudely the first time we met made me question their character. I would have been furious if my husband hadn't apologized to me beforehand. My parents had also been warned by my husband about the situation, so they stayed calm even when my in-laws mocked us. Well, it's true we run a small business, but thankfully, we're able to keep working and pay our employees' salaries, my father said. I wonder how many employees you have, my mother-in-law asked. Oh, by the way, I heard Jasmine has an older brother. Our son is working today. He can't come back here, so he can't join us, my father replied. Is he on a business trip or something? Does your brother work for a decent company? My mother-in-law asked. Our son works for my company, my father said. When he said that, my in-laws all laughed. You mean it's a family business? A family that can't even take a day off must not be doing very well. They kept saying terrible things about my family. My husband kept telling them to stop, but they wouldn't listen. So he finally made them end the meeting early. That's why I have a bad impression of my in-laws, and they keep making fun of my family. Honestly, some people might cancel the marriage after something like this. But I love my husband so much that I decided to marry him anyway. As long as we avoid my in-laws, we can live peacefully and happily. In fact, my husband doesn't like his family either, and I was really angry at them for mocking my family, so we didn't visit them unless we absolutely had to. About a year after we got married, I guess they got tired of us not showing up. They started to force us to interact with them. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law began coming to our house often. They said whatever they wanted. Paul never comes home. Jasmine must be stopping him from visiting. I'm sure she is because she's jealous of our lives. Well, I don't blame you. We live differently from people who are less well off. But you should at least have a baby soon. If you don't have a child, people will just think she's a worthless wife who's only after money. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law would come over for a short time, from when I got home from work until my husband came home. I get home early because my job lets me leave on time, but my husband works overtime and usually gets home just before 9 p.m. During those 3 hours, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law would come over to pick on me. You live in such a modest apartment. Paul works for a good company. You should be in a nicer house. My husband and I think this place is big enough for us. Not your husband, but you, right? Don't push your values on Paul. The fridge has a lot of plain food. Don't look in the fridge without asking. You don't have any caviar or fine wines. We don't have anything like that. Oh, this is so dull. Why did Paul marry this woman? It's rare to find someone so poor and boring. You can say that, but if you try to touch our money even a little, you'll regret it. We'll make sure you disappear from society. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law would mock me, threaten me, and ridicule me before leaving. I talked to my husband about it, and he would scold them, but they kept coming over without any remorse. They would even show up at my apartment when I came home. I felt depressed every time I had to go home. How could they not get tired of bothering me? Despite everything, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law kept trying to belittle me. I had a mental breakdown. I started spending time at a cafe until my husband finished work, and then I would go home with him. When my mother-in-law and sister-in-law saw me coming home with my husband, they said, "You're like a pest, taking away Paul's freedom like that." It was actually worse that they waited outside for 3 hours just to make things difficult for me. My husband was so disgusted that he even asked my father-in-law for help. But my father-in-law was just like my mother-in-law. He said it was rare for them to see a poor wife and warned that our marriage might be in trouble if things kept going this way. I decided to use my last resort. I know it's not something I'm comfortable with, but my in-laws had pushed me too far. A few days later, my husband and I went to visit them. They were thrilled when we told them my husband was bringing his wife home. I was shocked when my mother-in-law said, "I'm so happy to see Jasmine again. I don't know what kind of fun it is to be a wife-beater." We spent the weekend at my in-laws' house. When we arrived by car, they rushed out and excitedly asked my husband, "Hey Paul, what's with this car? It's amazing. I'm glad you finally decided to live like us. But buying such a luxury car out of the blue is quite a move." My husband laughed and told them, "This isn't my car, it's Jasmine's father's." "What?" my mother-in-law and sister-in-law said at the same time. Then my parents got out of the car. My in-laws were stunned when they saw them dressed in high-end suits. What an expensive-looking suit, and I've seen that outfit before. Why are Jasmine's parents wearing such fancy clothes? Finally, my brother got out of the car, standing tall at 6 feet and looking like a model. My in-laws' expressions changed when they saw my brother wearing the same high-end brown suit as my father. "Who is that handsome guy?" they asked. "Nice to meet you. I'm Simon, Jasmine's brother," he replied. My in-laws were stunned by how different my family looked compared to their previous impressions. Seeing their reaction, my husband said, "What are you doing?" He urged them to quickly show my family around the house. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law quickly invited my family inside, leading them to the living room and saying, "We'll have tea ready for you right away." Their attitude was completely different from before. They were very curious and began asking my parents questions. "How are you able to afford such luxury items?" "It's ridiculous," my in-laws questioned, their attitudes changing drastically just because of appearances. Then my father spoke up. "My factory is small, but we make unique parts that no one else can. We get orders from big Japanese and foreign companies." My in-laws' faces went pale when they heard this. Suddenly, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law started being very nice to me. My father-in-law stayed silent, not saying a word. However, my sister-in-law was very interested in my brother and talked to him a lot. "What kind of work do you do at your father's company?" she asked. "I've always been good at English. I handle business meetings with overseas companies, so I spend half of the year traveling abroad," Simon explained. "That's impressive. Are you single, Simon?" "No, I'm married," Simon said. "That's too bad. But I think I'd be a better match for you than your wife. What do you think? If you're interested, why don't we go out for dinner?" My sister-in-law boldly suggested, right in front of me and my parents. Honestly, I was impressed by her audacity. But I was determined to confront her right then and there. My brother looked at me and nodded. "Me, with an ordinary girl like you? Are you kidding me, Simon?" She laughed. "You're a funny girl. Are you seriously saying you're more desirable than my wife?" My wife was a former model, highly educated, and the daughter of the president of a well-known company. No matter how you look at it, you're not in her league. It's amusing how some people with a little bit of money overestimate their worth. "I haven't said anything bad about you, so you should understand your place and stick to it." Simon's words struck a chord, leaving my sister-in-law stunned and speechless. She was so shocked she could barely react. Finally, my father turned to my in-laws. I don't care how wealthy the other family is. Money is important, but you can't measure a person's worth by money alone. Let's focus on being decent people and not obsess over wealth. I'm sorry if we were a bit harsh today, he said, bowing in apology. My in-laws were completely shocked and quickly bowed to my father. Since then, they haven't tried to bully me again. In fact, they regularly contact me to flatter me, which I find a bit annoying. By the way, neither my parents nor my brother are the type to wear expensive brands or flaunt their wealth. They only went along with my plan this time. My father prefers to wear an old, inexpensive suit and isn't interested in luxury items. My brother is very kind and doesn't make fun of people, which is why his wife's father respects him so much. He even asked my brother to take over the company because he believes he's a better heir than his own eldest son. I'm sorry for putting my family through something they weren't used to. Everyone was extremely tired on the way home. But now I've been able to return to a peaceful married life with my husband. I haven't visited my in-laws since then, but my husband goes to see them at least during Thanksgiving and Christmas. After that event, my in-laws have changed their behavior. They no longer brag about their wealth like they used to. My husband even says he feels more comfortable with them now. I'm not sure if they'll revert to their old ways, but for now, I'm relieved that the issue has been resolved. I'll continue to take care of my husband and family and live with modesty. My in-laws thought they were superior, but in reality, other family members make much more money than they do. They should be embarrassed about how they acted. I feel small if I kept trying to put down people who are less fortunate. I don't think people with that attitude would do such things. I'm glad you were able to stand up to your in-laws. I hope you continue to enjoy a happy life with your family.